welcome to Tech Ascent, the podcast where we dive into the trends, strategies, and success stories that are reshaping the tech landscape as we know it today. I'm your host, Oliver Klingane. I'm also the founder of Ascension, the premier business development partner within tech. Today, we've got a great guest joining us. We're joined by the co-founder and CEO of Conductiv, Gopal Swamy. Gopal, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do in the day-to-day with Conductiv?
I'm an entrepreneur. That's pretty much all I've done for my career. I took some brief pauses and did things like management consulting, but largely I've been an entrepreneur. Right now, I run a company with my team that is called Conductiv, and we provide AI and data to credit unions and community banks.
Awesome. And of course, being the co-founder with Conductiv, what did you see in the market that made you want to start this company?
So my previous company, we got really good at understanding how to aggregate data from different sources and how to build reusable components. In that context, it was mobile software, so you could probably get where that comes from. What we saw in banking and financial services and credit unions is that there are there are a lot of opportunities to automate data collection and to get the right kind of high quality data collected through digital means, as well as have reusable components and AI to further do things like fight fraud, automate, create efficiencies, and overall make the interactions that customers have with their financial institutions far less friction filled and more fruitful.
Awesome. And you mentioned how beneficial AI has been to the growth of Conductiv. What aspects of that play, kind of how has that boosted your company? How has it brought a little bit of momentum?
Well, there's been a shift, I think, in the minds of the credit unions and the community banks, and I would argue every enterprise everywhere, that AI used to be a couple years ago was very scary and maybe something that could be implemented here and there. Now, I think there still is some skepticism and fear, but what enterprises, banks, credit unions are realizing is no, we have to do this now. And the question then becomes, what kind of AI do we want? And can we do it in such a way that is digestible? Like, can we do it in a way that we're actually able to do it easily?
For sure. And you mentioned the growth of just general AI a few years ago was scary. Now it's just almost talked about
Table
daily,
stakes.
especially
Yes.
within the day-to-day of the tech space. With
Yes.
that, there's still some people that are a bit slow to adopt. They're still in that kind of scary phase, we'll call it. How do
Yeah.
you go about kind of educating and showcasing the value of what Conductiv offers?
It's a great question. I think what is not talked about enough maybe is the need to, before you do AI, to get good data.
Hmm.
If you have good data, you have good AI. If you have great data, you have great AI. And so at Conductiv, we are one part data and one part AI. That's the platform. And so we begin all of our conversations by saying, look, you're facing certain pressures right now. Fraud is at all-time highs. Efficiency is what is needed. You want to remove friction from the interactions, and you want to what's called open accounts, deposit accounts seamlessly, and make loans seamlessly. So with that in mind, the first and easier step is to say, look, let's lean on a provider, maybe Conductive, to provide us with the highest quality data. And how does that happen? Well, the best quality data out there is what's called permission data. Just as an example, nobody knows what I have in my bank account. The only way to get at my bank transactions is for me to permission you in. I give my username, my password. You don't store that, but I permission you in one time so you can suck out data so that I can get a loan, so that I can make a deposit account, so that I don't have to come into the branch, so that I don't have to do PDFs. So you can see where I'm coming from, where this prevents fraud, this creates efficiencies, and this reduces friction. It makes my interactions really powerful. And that's just the data gathering part. So to answer your question, You've gotten all these benefits just by gathering the right kind of data, permission data in the right way. Then when you apply, excuse me, AI on top of it, then that data store is so rich that the insights that you can get become all the more powerful. And so we kind of do a two-step process. Thankfully, we are integrated with some really powerful software platforms, both in the lending and the account opening space. And so for the lenders that use those platforms, which is thousands of lenders, there's no work to do. It's really easy. And that's a big part of our conversation.
No, that's amazing what you guys are building. And in this space, Gopal, there's a lot of noise, especially regarding AI. Obviously, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
with it being a trend, there's a lot of companies that are just hopping on the bandwagon. So I like the saying, there's a lot of companies that are promising unicorns and delivering donkeys. How are you guys going about kind of differentiating yourself in such a competitive, noisy space?
Again, good question. If you're talking about lending and account opening and the things that financial institutions care about, I think it's important for us to say as conductive is there's things that we're not doing. We're not doing what's called machine learning. We're not doing that. Um, we're not looking at reams and reams of data that is internal to the bank or the credit union and then coming back with a score. That's a powerful solution, but that's not what we do. There are some great providers that do that. What we do instead is we provide what we call permissioned AI. And so the first thing we're doing is we're getting a whole bunch of data. And let me give you a quick use case. Largely, lenders want to know what your last two pay stubs look like because they want to know how much money you made last month. But if you go through a permission route through Conductiv, for example, logging into your ADP, you might get 20 pay stubs or 40. All that data has to sit somewhere. And imagine the insights that you can get from that data. That's the kind of AI that we're doing. And so we call it permissioned data AI or permissioned AI.
No, it sounds like a super on its own, just a unique strategy in the space. And
Yeah, I mean, we want to do something that adds a lot of value, that's really easy to understand, that obviously is AI, because that's where we are, both from a cultural and a technology perspective. But we want to do something again that like adds a lot of distinct value and doesn't overlap or compete with some of the other great solutions that are out there.
hmm, no, that's a fantastic strategy as well. And the two biggest things there is you're providing a lot of value, and you also said it's easy to understand. Sometimes when you get into the complexities of AI and tech, it's hard, especially in that financial services space. Not everybody understands the kind of tech side of the business. So it's good that you provide those two kind of main key points. That's your value proposition, essentially. And with that, getting a company off the ground, being the co-founder, CEO, what has that journey been like over the past few years for Conductiv?
Well, I mean, this is my third startup that I started, and then I've worked with other talented entrepreneurs as an early stage employee. So I guess there's a lot of muscle memory there. I think it's very exciting. It's it's very, very cool to see a problem, to try and figure out how to solve it, and then to sort of birth a an entity that solves that problem. And it's not always glamorous, but it's a lot of work. But it's what I like to do. So yeah.
No, great. It sounds like you love to do it. You shared that. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned along the way as an entrepreneur of over the three companies, including this one?
Um, I mean, I'm borrowing a little bit here from a really great book that the gentleman who started Okta has written. Really cool book, but I think he's got it right. You know, you obviously want to have a problem that's real, that's big, that people want solved. But uh, when you start your company, you have to think about, well, is the technology today powerful enough to allow you to solve that problem? Two, kind of emotionally, Are the buyers and is the market ready to adopt? And that's very germane to this discussion, right? Like about AI. Like how far along on the curve are the buyers? Um, and so I think those are the two biggest factors I would argue. There are more, but are emotionally and culturally are people at the point where they can actually adopt your solution? And then can you actually do it? Like really do it end to end? Or are you providing a partial solution? And when you provide a complete solution and people are ready to buy it, it sounds kind of obvious. But then you have a real company. Then you have something you can have a lot of fun doing.
Yeah, those are two great lessons. And with that, Gopal, where do you feel we are in this AI curve? On your second lesson, where do you
Uh,
feel we are in the AI curve?
I think it's fair to say that we're very early into the process. I mean, not to buzzword everyone to death, but like agentic AI is just the beginning. Um, in the next 5 years, things will be very, very different um, for everybody that does any kind of a job. And I don't think I don't, it's not a doomsday scenario. It's just going to become the case that we're all going to use AI to a greater or lesser extent, and that's just going to be the way that it is.
And for companies that aren't using AI yet, how do you, what sort of advice being in the space do you have for them to get them ahead of the curve?
I would start with the data. You know, take a look at in order to do the jobs that you need to do, everything from marketing and sales all the way to the back end, and just have a real clear picture of if you could wave your a magic wand and get the data that you want, what is it? And then think about, well, how can I get that data digitally? And once you have that data asset, then keep it secure and safe, obviously. Then you are in the driver's seat because the AI, the algorithms, whatever you use, you will have trained it right, and it will do the things that you want it to do. And you don't need to replace people. You can augment people. You can help them do their jobs faster and better. And start there.
Hmm, it's a great place to start. And you touched on it there, and it's another trend we've also seen is with AI, with the data, especially in the financial services space, making it secure is a big priority. How do you go about doing that with Conductiv, and where does that fall on your priority list?
Um, we have a policy of no PII, so no personally identifiable information. Um, the breadth of data out there, particularly permission data, is very wide. And so often there isn't a real convenient place behind the firewall in the enterprise's databases for this data to be stored so that it can be used. So what I mean by that is we have to store it. And the only safe way really for Conductiv to store that data is if it doesn't have anybody's name or address or social security number or anything identifiable on it. That way, if somebody breaks into our platform, what are you going to take? Go headless. So from a vendor perspective, that really makes the obviously we're going to be SOC 2 compliant, but if there's nothing in there to take, then that makes the decision a lot easier. In terms of storing, that kind of secure data behind the firewall, as an enterprise, as a bank, as a credit union, yeah, that's probably another discussion. You obviously want to use all the security possible to keep that safe.
Awesome. No, and I saw it on your website that security was a big thing for Conductiv, so it's great to hear, great to see. And with that, what's the future hold for Conductiv? We've talked about your guys' kind of journey to get to this point. What's the future hold? What's in store for 2025?
Well, I mean, there are thousands of lenders in this country who are a little smaller, right? Not the mega banks. And they're facing a lot of competition from fintechs as well as the biggest bank. And if the consumer and small businesses want to get the best financial services, then we probably want an environment and a country where community banks are thriving and credit unions are thriving. And so what we want to do is support those two industries and sort of give them the ammunition, the tools that they need to compete and thrive. Because otherwise, people with sort of lower and mid-level credit scores gonna have to pay a lot to get the same services, or if they get them at all. And the same thing with uh, small businesses and businesses in general. If they don't have large histories of success, they're going to be excluded. And debt uh, and credit, these kinds of things. This is what we as individuals and small business owners need to grow and survive. So we really want to lean into that. That's our bread and butter. We're also working with some insurance companies. They're smaller, but it's part of the same equation, which is how do you help kind of more regular folks succeed?
Yeah, no, Conductive's on a fantastic mission. I love to see what you guys are doing, see what the future holds for you. Gopal, I got one last question before we go.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're on your third business now as an entrepreneur. If you could rewind the clock a little bit, tell yourself on day one of starting your first business, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh, that's a good one. I guess the number one thing would be try and find people who you really trust early on and see if you can get them to be your partners. You can't do it alone. There's going to be a lot that you'll have to do on your own, but the more you can get really good people, and it could just be one or two people, that's enough. The earlier you can bring them in, the more successful you'll be.
Powerful lesson. I love it, Gopal. But that's all I got for you today. I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your insights about what you're doing with Conductiv, your journey as an entrepreneur, your journey with up to this point. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Awesome. And for everybody listening, if you guys want to check out Gopal or Conductiv, I'll put their links down in the description. You guys can go take a look. But Gopal, once again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.